A leader's purpose or role is to set direction, provide support, and develop themselves. If we can grasp those concepts and that it's all fundamentally about learning and about people, then we're going to be able to achieve greatness in our organizations, like the value for our customers, the thing we create or the service we provide.
What's up, everybody? This is Paul Critchley, president of New England Lean Consulting and host of the New England Lean podcast. Welcome back. Thanks for coming back. I'm going to get to our guest this week real quick in just a second, and it's pretty exciting. It's our very first repeat guest on the show, so I'm pretty excited about that. But before I get there, in case you missed it, I made a pretty big announcement this past week. We're going to be recording this podcast live at the GBMP conference in Springfield, Massachusetts on October 6th and 7th. So first things first, I want to say thank you, a heartfelt thank you to Bruce Hamilton, who's a previous podcast guest and somebody I consider a friend, for saying yes when I reached out to him to ask him if he'd be interested in even letting us do something like this. And honestly, he didn't really hesitate. He said, yeah, let's do it. Let's try it, see how it goes. I mean, that's Bruce, right? He's the Toast Kaizen guy. So he's going to be one of those folks who's like, we've never done it before. Let's try it and experiment a little. So thank you, Bruce. Thanks to everybody at GBMP for agreeing. I'm pumped for it. We're assembling all the cool stuff for it. If you don't subscribe to us on our social media channels, please do take a second and do that, because we are actually going to be live streaming some of it as well. So we're just working through the kinks now behind the scenes to make sure I don't screw it up when we get there. But it should be a rocking good time, and I'm really looking forward to it. All right, so this brings us to our guest this week. It's Katie Anderson. You know her. I know it, right? She's a lot of fun. We have a bunch of fun in this episode. I do poke fun at myself. Katie was our very first guest, our very first episode ever. I made, like anybody's going to, I made a lot of mistakes. And as I was getting ready to edit this episode, I kind of rewatched the very first one I did. And it was, I won't say it was cringeworthy, but there was a few times in there I'm like, ooh, Paul, no, don't do that. But Katie's a great sport, and I was so excited to have her back. She's actually got a lot of cool stuff happening as well, not the least of which, she's launching her next Leading to Learn Accelerator program, starting in mid-October. And if you haven't heard of this before, she's run it one other time, so this will be the second time. It's part book study, part facilitated course, part group coaching. It's based off of her book. It lasts for 10 weeks. And I've heard a lot of good things. I didn't go through it last time. I couldn't. I was too busy with other client stuff, so the schedule didn't play out, but I really want to. But I do know some folks who went through it. Nothing but good things to say. So if you have a chance, check it out. There's a link in the show notes that you can go and check it out. But I also wanted to say, listeners of this podcast, you have an opportunity to save $100 by using a discount code specific to us. So you have to be a listener. That code, NE, Lean Podcast, and then the number 100, and that's all one word. So you have to listen to it. I'm not putting this in the show notes so people can cheat. So you have to be a listener. NE, Lean Podcast 100. So use that promo code, save $100 on that accelerator program. Do yourself a favor, sign up for it, take it. You're going to love it. In this episode, Katie and I, we cover a lot of ground. I'm not going to summarize it for you. Essentially, it's just like the title. It's all about falling down 7 times, getting up 8. As always, I hope you like it. I hope you get something from it. We'll talk to you real soon. Okay. All right. Welcome to the New England Lean podcast and a return visit, so I didn't scare her off too bad, as the initial guinea pig guest, Katie Anderson. Katie.
Hey. I'm thrilled to be here for season 3, right?
Season 3.
And we're also recording just after the first anniversary of the launch of the podcast in my guest episode. So I'm really thrilled to be back here to continue our conversation, to catch up on the last year, and and have a great chat.
Yeah. So I know we've both been busy. I've been working on this, so it's a little less clunky maybe than it was about a year or so ago. So I think it's been better. We get good feedback on it. And I know you've been, so when you were on the podcast, you were season 1, episode 1. So you're the very first guest. And you have your book, and I'll hold it up. Ta-da, right? And back then, I think it had just come out, or it came out like a few weeks, and I think you were at like 30 some odd reviews on Amazon. And today you are at
171. I just checked. So
which is that's
really
awesome.
Exciting to know the impact that the book Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn is having in the lives of so many people around the world. And it really was a passion project from the heart between me and Mr. Yoshino, and a lot of hours and time. And to know, I just felt compelled that these stories of his, of 40 years at Toyota, needed to be documented, needed to come out in the world, and to have an opportunity for people to learn for themselves about their own behavior, their own organizations. And so I'm just thrilled that that impact is actually the one that's being had, and that people are having a really positive experience.
And it is. So I hadn't, shamefully do admit, this is like podcast 101. You always read the book of the guest you're going to have on. And I didn't have a chance to have gotten through it when I had you on the first time.
Okay,
so thankfully we've
dive
rectified
in.
that situation.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who has written a review. I have to say, I know, like, before writing a book, I probably never put reviews in, but you being a podcast host and me an author, it really is so helpful to hear from people and readers, and to validate why others should listen to a podcast or read a book or download it. So thank you to the 171 people on Amazon who have submitted a review, and I'm looking forward to others too. But it's really rewarding as an author, and also it's super helpful.
And you're right. And that's just it. And I won't give too much away from the book for those who haven't yet picked it up and read it. But I appreciate the way you formatted it, and you cover it right in the introduction. And I had read that part, and I'm like, I don't really understand this. But then the light bulb kind of goes off as you're reading through how you lay out the stories. And it's like, it's it's something I didn't expect. But then when you kind of get through it, you're like, that makes perfect sense. And it's a funny, now I'll read a book, I'm like, I hate the way this is set up. They got to set it up the way, right, Katie had set up hers.
Thank you. That was I was really struggling actually for a long time about how to structure the book. That was my responsibility as the author. I had all these stories, but how to structure it. I talk about how originally it was like 10 leadership lessons, and that just felt clunky. And like, we kind of have, there are enough of those books, but then we had these personal stories and these professional stories. And I was wondering, how do I mix these two together? And so through this conversation with Mr. Yoshino, really came to know about this warp and weft concept of weaving, which was, to me, it's been so powerful about how do you, it's the part of the book cover too, are these warp threads, which are the solid threads that we lay down in our lives that have a deep sense of purpose, that unite us along the way, and like hold perseverance and tenacity and don't break. And then all these woven threads that we learn through our life. And it's through the intersection of like the known and the discovered that really create our purpose and our life tapestry. And I think it's just a beautiful metaphor, and also provided me with some creative structure on how to hold true on both personal goals and professional learning about leadership.
And I love the callback too, Lean's based on the two-order production system, and you look back in the automated loom, and it's like,
yep, they started as a weaving company.
Wow, so
there's a lot of meta circular connections there. Yes,
right. And as an engineer, it's like the up down, the warp, is it right?
Yep.
That speaks to. Yeah, so that speaks to me, because that's me, at least. It's, what do I need to do? Step 1, 2, 7, 9, 10. Okay, I got it. And there's always, and so I can get that. I'm good at that part. I've always been kind of good at that part, because that's my logical, chronological side. But it's the other thread that I'm like, that it does make sense, because now, as I've gotten, I'm older now, and I look back to, what I used to do in my 20s, and I'm like, God, if I only had a second to go back and smack that guy upside the head, because there's things that I could have taken into consideration that kind of run perpendicular that, would have been opportunities for learning and all that kind of fun stuff.
That's the beauty of your life fabric, though, is that you can still learn from it and zoom out and have a different perspective of the pattern that you wove. And maybe it was a little looser back in, the early days, and then what's emerging now. So it's that integration of the different aspects of our life that really create who we are and really our life legacy.
Right. And it goes right to, and I'll tell you too. So and we'll talk here in a second about what we've been up to in the last year or so, but I've sort of, for me, and I guess since you and I chatted formally the last time, I don't know, I don't want to say I've solidified my stance, but I guess I've learned that it's, and it's going to sound silly when I say it out loud, but it's the culture piece that is so much more important. I'll just say it. It's more important. Tools is great, and we got to learn those. But when you have the culture piece and you have people who are psychologically safe and right, and there's trust and respect and all that stuff, all that, like the other side of the house, the continuous improvement side from, versus respect for people gets so much easier. And I've seen a lot of this kind of play out in social media. And I went on I put a couple things out there, and I had Karen Ross come on the show. We kind of chatted about it too. But it's that, like you just mentioned, it's the weft part. And it's just interesting to me that I don't know, like I'd love to see more people talk about things that way and kind of framework them that way, because I think it's important to take a look at it from both of those perspectives.
Absolutely. And the tools, as you said, are enablers, and the production principles and the concepts. But if we don't have an environment where there's clarity of direction, where people are supported to develop their capability and confidence to be their best selves and contribute to problem solving, and we're not each looking at ourselves as an opportunity for improvement, we're not going to really have that culture. And to me, that really sums up, the framework of leadership that I describe in the book, which is a leader's purpose or role is to set direction, provide support, and develop themselves. If we can grasp those concepts, and that it's all fundamentally about learning and about people, then we're going to be able to achieve greatness in our organizations, like the value for our customers, the thing we create or the service we provide. But it does come back to those essence of culture, and culture is made up of people. So it's the actions we take as individuals that collectively creates that culture.
Right. So I don't know. I'm ruminating on it, and I'm still thinking about it some more. I'm trying to, I've been working on including that in some of the training that we do, maybe some of that language, and trying to get people to think more that way.
Yeah. Well, and that's great too. By engaging them, you're fulfilling that purpose, engaging them and helping them develop abilities for problem solving, and you need to know how to do these things with the process and the tools as well. So you can't have, as Mr. Yoshino says, you can't have it's like a cart and, pulled by the horse. If you don't have both wheels, it's not going to go anywhere. So you need both the more tangible artifacts and tools, and you need the people-centered learning practices coupled together. Right. To really create that learning wheel.
Right. So we kind of chatted a little bit about where we chatted about a year ago. It's about a year and a week. So since then, right. Yeah. So since then, I mean, when we recorded, we were smack dab in the middle of COVID-19, the original version, not right Delta variant, whatever else we got now. So what have you been up to the last year or so?
Yeah, it's been for all of us, we've had to think of new and creative ways to stay engaged and connected and do meaningful work. And for me, first I was worried about publishing a book in a pandemic. And I have to say, it actually was a real gift to me, as well as hopefully to others to learn from, but had that as an anchor. And I've really leveraged the book as well as my own practices and been creative about how can I connect with broader audiences. I developed a workbook to help take the practices and the stories from learning to lead, leading to learn more into people's lives. And that's available on my website. So it brings in more of my teaching and coaching concepts as well. I launched the first cohort of my Leading to Learn Accelerator program. It's a 10-week program using the book as a foundation of learning, and had an amazing cohort of leaders around the world. And I'm super excited to announce that I'm going to be launching my new cohort in October of
Awesome.
2021. So more to come on that. We can dive into that. And, it's been so exciting. I've been working with a lot of corporate clients as well to do custom programs for them, coming in, speaking at conferences, doing some custom Leading to Learn accelerators or workshops. And so for me, like my purpose and mission is to help inspire and enable people around the world to live and lead with intention. And so even though we haven't been able to travel so much, the opportunity to connect with so many people has really lifted me up and given me joy, even in times of challenge as well. And of course, it hasn't all come easy. So that makes it sound like, woo, that was super easy. Like there was a lot of hard work, and the Japanese proverb, fall down 7 times, get up 8. There's definitely been a lot of falling down, but continuing to say, well, what can I learn? How can I continue to go forward and have that impact? So that's been all super exciting, and taking a little time off to be with family. And I've also built my team around me. I was, much more of a one-woman show last year when we spoke. And, of course, I hired people to publish and help promote the book. But I realized for me to have the impact that I want in this world, it also needed to have some support as well. And so that's been really exciting. I have some people working with me to help support my mission of impacting intentional leadership around the world. And that's been really, really exciting and fun. And I get to, embody those leadership principles in my own business as well that I talk about.
That's cool. I didn't even see it. Now, a lot of this, obviously you and I interact quite a bit on, especially social media. So I didn't know that you had grown the team. So that's cool. Congrats.
Thank you. And thank you to my awesome team for being part of Team Katie.
Yeah. Right. Do they get shirts or hats, or what's the deal?
No, well, not yet. I mean, that feels a little pretentious, but I'm sure some Darumas will be coming forward in the future for them as well. And so they're all around the world as well.
All right. Well, all right. Maybe, yeah, all right. Fair enough. And actually, I got to reach back here. So, yeah, I can do it without. So I had posted this. So here's the one you gave me at AME in Chicago.
There's still so Paul is holding up a small Japanese Daruma doll that I gave him at AME 2 years ago.
Yep. So for those listening, not looking, there's still only the one eye filled in. So I haven't met my goal yet.
Oh, well, fall down 7 times, get up 8, Paul.
That's right. And so for those listening again, not watching, this is directly behind me. This is my office, and it's always behind me. So every time I turn around to get a book or anything off it's right there staring at me. So it's like that little constant reminder, like you got something else to go do. You said you were going to do it.
Yep. Well, that's good. It's a visual reminder of your goal, and it can help you persevere and move forward. For those of you who are watching, you can see my Daruma collection behind me here. And I was showing this earlier on a workshop I was leading with the team in the Netherlands. Actually, this is a Daruma doll that I made of ceramics during the pandemic. So
nice.
There you go. Yeah.
Nice. So you build a team. You took.
Yep.
Did you do ceramics? Like.
Yes, ceramics. I did learn to cook some new recipes in the kitchen, especially Asian cuisine and Indian cuisine, because we were eating at home so much, and I was missing going to restaurants. But so that was early pandemic days, getting into that. I'm raising money for ALS as well. My dad died almost 5 years ago of ALS, and I'm the team captain in the Ride to Defeat ALS for Team Hardy. And so that's something that I'm also passionate about as well. And then I have, raising my family and my 2 boys who are currently 7 and 10, and being, balancing, as we all are, our home lives and our work from home lives together, and what that looks like. So, but that's been a fun challenge as well.
So I did want to ask a little bit about that, Katie, because I mean, I think probably everybody's probably sick of talking about COVID, but the one thing I am curious about is, as a fellow lean practitioner, I found, I'll speak for me and then I'll ask a question. even though I teach this stuff, as my job, I did find it difficult to like pivot a little, because like all of a sudden, I mean, obviously COVID, the pandemic was a huge change for everybody. Our kids just, they went virtual at school. So then they were home, and then we had, bandwidth problems. My wife was working from home, and it changes the dynamic, because prior to that, I was used to, right, everybody gets up, we do breakfast. I make, my wife makes lunches. I make breakfast. Everybody's out of the door at like 6:45. And from that point until about 2:30 in the afternoon, if I'm at the home office, I'm doing my own thing. It's perfect, peaceful, and quiet. Then all of a sudden I have 3 other people in the house, and it's just, you're right. So I'm just curious, looking back, is there any lean lessons that you can maybe spin into, like how you pivoted and what you did and any of that kind of fun stuff?
I don't know if they're lean lessons. I think we have shared experience here. My husband works from home, and the kids were at home as well. I think some of it was, and it's hard. My children are a lot younger too. My little guy was he was in kindergarten when COVID first hit. So I mean, that's just a different level of supervision that's required. So that was hard, but I think for us, and we're still actually navigating a new world now. There's like a few, I have a few in-person things safely, of course, and my husband has a few things as well. And so like, we can't make the assumption that we're both going to be home. We have one child who's still homeschooling and the other who needs to be picked up at different times. And so it's about creating expectations and standards. So clarity on roles and time. It's calendar syncing and the same stuff. It's like, how do we have clarity of expectations? And I think this goes to the work environment too. How do we know who is responsible for what tasks? And so same thing about work as well. So, what's your responsibility? And then how are we checking in to see how that's going? We're working with our kids too on how are they having more responsibility for the things that they need to do. And, so how can checklists and standard work and, almost like work charts help them and know what's going on. So, I think there's so much that we can do with like the lean principles and practices, make things visible, don't assume anything, and use opportunities for, plan, do, study, adjust, or as I like to say, study, adjust, plan, do, SAPD. How are we learning from the things that aren't going well, and how are we making those adjustments, and then creating new standards, and then using that as an opportunity for improvement. But there's no, I can't say I had a magic wand. There was a lot of learning in the moment and learning by doing as well. And a lot of falling down more than 7 times and getting up, but we're still getting up. We're still making it work.
Right. Yeah. Us too. I'll tell you, it was a very 5S spring and summer here last year. We cleaned the entire basement. I mean, we brought truckloads of stuff to, donate, and quick funny story. So we're working in the kitchen, so we're 5S'ing the kitchen, because it just so happened, I opened up this cabinet, like this plastic, pitcher bottle. I'm like, that's it. We have the time, so let's do this. And we actually had 3 punch bowls. So there's this, I don't know if you had the same deal. So right next to our stove is this kind of weird cabinet that you can get into, but then it goes really deep. It's the perfect, stuff just shoved to the back and you never even think about it. So I'm digging all this stuff out. We have 3 punch bowls. We do not entertain a lot, nor if when we do we have crystal punch bowls out. And I'm like, Danielle, my wife, I'm like, why? What is it? Why? She's like, well, those were wedding gifts. Now, we've been married almost 20 years. It sat in there the whole time. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we don't need this.
Someone else can use this.
So I'll tell you, we didn't get rid of all 3. We'll get rid of 2. We kept the one her grandmother gave her. I'm like, totally fine. I'm okay. But so I was just interested too, because I have to continuously remind myself that, I take for granted, lean, the tools, the culture, how do we do it? You have to be flexible, all this kind of stuff. And I have to remind myself that not everybody does this. Like we do this all day, every day. But sometimes I'll walk into a plant and they've never done this before. So when I start spouting off about all the great things that lean can do, I have to remember that is legit scary for some folks. And COVID for me was a really great reminder for that, because now all of a sudden I have to change. And it's like, oh yeah, that's how this feels. Like, it's real easy for me to say, well, change this and everything will get better. But now if I have to, now I had to do it, we all had to do it. And it's like, ooh, it's a little bit different when it's, you're pointing back at yourself.
Yeah, for sure. It's a humbling experience for us all to remember that, there's a human experience around change and feeling like you're part of the change or change was imposed upon you. And that's a really important thing to remember when we're working in organizations too. How do we help bring people along to be part of the design of the new, whatever it is, or to be part of the change so that it doesn't feel as done unto, even though, I talk about this in the book too. And it's something I explore in a lot of my coaching groups too, about how we can't control necessarily our environment or the things that happen to us, but we always can control our own, well, maybe not always control our own reaction, but we can modify and create that. And so that's about what's our response and how do we respond to change? How do we respond to environmental things? How do we respond to disappointment, to failure, to success? We can't necessarily control the things outside of, truly outside of us, frankly. So it's about looking inward and having a different mindset, and how do we help people to experience that as well. I talk about that that concept of intention too, is about what's important inside of us, or like, who do we want to be and the actions we need to take to align with that, versus goals are more external. They're about what we want to achieve, and sometimes there are things that we can't control around that. What we want to achieve isn't currently possible, but who we want to be and how we show up, that is always in our control. So how do we create an environment that helps people experience that as well, and be kind to ourselves as well? Change is hard, man. It's been a really tough 18 plus months for everyone in different ways.
Right. For sure. And you're right. I think we all have to give, and I'm going to mess this quote up, but I just read online recently, somebody said, would you be as hard on yourself as you are, or would you be as hard on other people as you are on yourself? We tend to forgive other people much easier than we forgive ourselves. Yeah. And to your point, I mean, this change was forced upon all of us, in different respects. I mean, different states had different lockdown procedures. And I mean, it was messy for sure. Here in New England, it was interesting. We actually, at New England, we didn't have the problem, but had we not timed things out necessarily correctly, we literally could have, like, for instance, gone from Connecticut to Rhode Island, but then not been able to come back without having to quarantine, because the rules would change day to day. And then you have Massachusetts, and it was just like, it was a lot to try to keep up with. So
I've also in that sense of there's so much outside of our control. It's like I've canceled so many of my Japan study trips just because right now we still can't obviously canceled both in 2020. Several months ago, I officially took off the calendar, the one in November that I had planned for November this year. I have trips on the calendar for May and October of 2022. I'd love to take all your listeners there and to run them. But again, we can't really plan for these things until we have a little bit greater certainty. And so it's like, how much energy do we put towards things? And it's balancing it out. I also had as you were talking, I was thinking about how do we bring in lean concepts to our own life. And you and I were chatting, I was sharing a recent example of, a challenge and a fall down experience I had of some quality issues in a product in business. And I'll talk about that more later, but I realized that we also have to communicate those lean principles to people who maybe don't come from our world. Like it's so funny. It's like eating your own medicine, right? Where I made assumptions around, quality expectations, and that someone would pull the figurative and on, let me know if there were quality issues. That didn't happen. And so I just assumed everything was okay. I'd done some spot checks, but didn't do a complete check. And so, it's okay. We're making corrections, and I'm like super excited by that. But it was an opportunity for me to also look at my own actions and like, wow, I made some assumptions around this. And we're so imbued in these lean concepts. Of course, you highlight problems, the whole mantra in Toyota, no problem's a problem and bad news first. But most people, that's not the environment that they have been raised in, or the culture, the business culture that they're familiar with. And so we have to make explicit that is our expectation. And so, it was just so that's been something new for me too, is a real reminder of, we can't assume that these things, because we've been talking about them for so long, they're so habitual for us, that they come naturally for others. And so how do we continue to be explicit and share these really important practices? Because that's how we're actually going to have a real meaningful impact on the world too. And how do we always go forward with not blaming the person, but looking at the process? And that was always important as well too. And it's been a good sort of personal challenge that I think I rose to. But it was definitely having to I was rereading my book literally, and and thinking, wow, there's a lot of lessons in here around failure, and what does it mean to be a people-centered leader, to set direction, provide support, create an environment where no problem is a problem, is the problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. We all have opportunities for learning and being kind to ourselves. As you said, we're often the hardest on ourselves, and we would be on other people too. And so to take that forward.
Yeah, and it is. And I think maybe we do, like you said, I think sometimes we do need to remind ourselves of those things. And maybe it's the universe, I don't know, giving us a little, a little kick, maybe to say, not so, you're there too, this, you're not immune to learning some of these lessons.
Well, if you stop learning, right, then you really stop living. So we got to keep our humility, and some I like to think that didn't need a kick in the humility pants, but it's just a good reminder that we all can make mistakes and have opportunities for improvement as well. So.
Yeah. And that's, for me, that's my wife. She's my reminder. She's like,
she's
and she's the ones, because I haven't written the book yet, so I can't read what I wrote, but she's very good at telling me what I said. She'd be like, didn't you just the other day say blah, blah, blah? I'm like, yes. And she's like, then why are you mad at so-and-so? Because you're doing what you said not to. I'm like, I know, just, but it's like, she's right. And I'm like, son of a gun, you got me again.
Yeah. Well, keep getting up when you fall down, Paul. And your Ruma will eventually get an eye filled in.
Yeah. So you mentioned you came up with a workbook, right? That kind of goes along with your book. And you've had, now that's in and of itself. And I think you mentioned it's electronic only right now.
Currently, it's in electronic downloadable form that you can print out or fill out electronically. It's 100 pages of building on the reflection questions that are at the end of each section in the book, and expanding more. So I have different exercises that go along that correspond with Mr. Yoshino's learning journey, that help you reflect on those and create things for yourself, like your own leadership credo, or identifying one of your top priorities in your business or your organization, and how are you going to help support people to achieve that, and what support do you need? So all these same concepts, what are the behaviors that leaders embody around setting direction, providing support, developing yourself? So it was a good, sort of secondary exercise to challenge myself. Well, how do you then take those stories and really help create a framework to really bring those lessons more richly into people's lives? So that's fun. It's available on my website, kbjanderson/workbook. And I may have a printed version in the future. I'm looking into some different options right now. It's been great, and the feedback's been tremendous from the people who've used it in my workshops, or some private clients and individuals who have bought it for themselves as well. So
nice.
Yeah,
and
that's 2 books out.
Right. So you're just cranking them out. But that brings me to what I was really wanted to ask you is, you mentioned 20 minutes ago, and then I was rambling on, But you have cohorts now that you have a workshop kind of that you've built out surrounding the lessons from the book.
Yeah, so it's not just a workshop. So I have my Leading to Learn masterclass, which is actually available on demand now on my website as well. And the time of our recording, I led a live one for an organization as well. But this Leading to Learn Accelerator is much more than a workshop. It's a 10-week program that combines self-paced study and using the book as a common story. So people can either be new to the book and reading it the first time, or going back and reading some select chapters, using the workbook to work through these exercises, and then have group coaching with me and mini workshops that I teach, bringing in additional concepts and materials. And so check adjust that I did from the first cohort is I'm recording all of the sort of the teaching components to be pre-recorded modules so people can do those on their own. And then the focus of the live time is going to be really around discussion, reflection, and some sort of mini interactive learning sessions as well. So to really capitalize on that learning time, because something I have learned in this pandemic is if we're going to sit and be on a live experience together, really everything about it needs to be interactive. So what can we learn offline, and then how do we leverage that in-person time together? But what was so exciting about the program the first time is just the tremendous feedback I got from the participants who were covered almost 10 countries around the globe, and just the learning they had both from Mr. Yoshino's stories and the group learning and the coaching that I do too. So it's been really exciting. And I can't wait to be launching a new cohort of it in October. So love for your listeners to join me. And I know we have some special links and opportunities for them to have as well too. So go to either the show notes or.
Yep. Okay. So I'll link all that stuff in the show notes. And by the time when we air this, which will be in a couple of weeks, I'll have recorded the intro, so it'll be in there too. But
yeah, fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So 10 weeks accelerator program.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Katie, there's not a lot of folks out that have something that's that in depth.
It is in depth, and it also, you can do as much or as little as you want through the time. So I think it really does take those lessons into your life and really truly accelerates leadership and learning for yourself, regardless if you're a continuous improvement coach and consultant or have an operational leadership role. It was exciting. I had people from independent contributors, new managers, to COO and company presidents in the group. And so it was a really cool mix of, and showing that we're all sort of part of this learning, this chain of learning, right? And so we can learn with and from each other from our different experiences. And so that community aspect that is developed too is what really lights me up. And so it allows me to fulfill my purpose of connecting with people around the world. So yeah, the Leading to Learn Accelerator with Katie Anderson, come be part of it. Reach out to me about any questions and go to the link on Paul's page for more information.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're right. And that's the best part of, I think, for me, at least, what I do is when you see that light bulb go off and people get really excited about, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought of this. I always thought, I've had people say, I always wanted to do this. I just didn't know what it was called. And I didn't know really how to do it.
Yeah.
So thank you for showing, and I'll go back in a week or two or whatever, and it'll be, look so much different. And they'll be so excited, to say, oh, Paul, come here. I want to show you this. I want to, we have a newish client that we just picked up. And there are some folks there that kind of do that. And I love that, because here's somebody that's done the same job, 10 years, 13, whatever it is. And they're excited about it again. And it's like, yeah, all right, that's cool. Right. This is what we're here for.
That's what, lights me up when I get up at 6 a.m. to lead a workshop, remotely, and I see the light bulbs go off on people, or up late at night or in person. And it's what always excited me about lean and learning, and seeing those light bulbs go off, and the engagement and the solving problems that matter to people is so awesome. I forgot to mention too, though, I can't believe this about the accelerator, that part of the program is getting to learn with Mr. Yoshino too. So people in the cohort get 2 opportunities for live discussion with Mr. Yoshino and to learn with him as well, which I think is I feel so fortunate to talk with him regularly, but it and to be able to offer that to others as well.
That's wicked cool.
Yeah,
That's really nice.
yeah.
All right, cool. Katie. So we still do the wicked fun part.
Oh, great! You went from one wicked to another. Great.
Well, it's part of the vernacular. I mean, I grew up in Maine, so you're lucky I've only said it twice.
All right.
All right. All right. So here we go. I'm gonna try to I marked these, so I'm pretty sure I didn't ask you these a year ago. What is your favorite song and why?
Oh my gosh, my favorite song. There are many songs I like, but I really love California Stars and by Wilco. I think it's by Wilco. Oh my gosh, when you ask a question, like your brain goes totally blank. But yeah, it's just I love the melody, and I'm from California. And I got exposed to the song when I wasn't living in California, and it would make me think of home. So.
Nice. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
What did you want to be when you were little?
Oh, I wanted to be a therapist, which is so interesting. So my mom's a marriage, family, child therapist, and I was always intrigued by the work that she did. And I mean, I guess I wanted to be a lot of things, but when I was really little, and I would listen to, radio talk shows of like the self-help, and I would read some of the books she had around. And what I find is really interesting is that my mom now remarks, she's like, everything, she'll probably listen to this podcast. Hi, Mom. And everything I talk about is in the same framework. What I learned from her about asking questions, about leading with the heart, about not blaming, about how do we show up with authenticity, is all the same things that we're doing as lean coaches, as continuous improvement leaders as well. And so I'm just doing it, obviously not diving into your childhood past, but like helping people show up more effectively at work. And the way that you do that as an effective coach and leader is very similar as you do as a therapist, so she says. And so that's been really interesting to see how that early interest has actually influenced where I am and in my career, and the things that really light me up, and how I'm able to connect with people today.
That's a great answer. It is funny. I don't know if you feel the same, because you and I are roughly, I think, the same age. I'm noticing more and more. It's like, for my parents, it's like, oh yeah, now that makes sense. I can see that, because now I'm where they were back then with like my kids, even, and business does same stuff. Right. And it's funny. I think that, things start to settle, and, the balls start to settle in the holes a little bit.
Yes.
I don't know. What do I know?
We're influenced by our environment. We're part nurture, part nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I did not ask you this one last time. What's one thing nobody knows about you?
Oh, one thing that well, some people know this about me, but like most of the listeners wouldn't know this about me. So I lived in Australia for 4 years in my late 20s and early 30s, and got really into open water swimming. And I think it was like my 28th birthday. That weekend, I did a 2-kilometer open water swim, and I won. No,
wow.
I actually didn't win, but I won a prize. I won the most average swimmer for the women. And never before in my life have I been happy to be average. But at that time, I those are like 2-kilometer open water swim is not an easy feat. And, so to be the average person, and I won a trip to Vanuatu to do a 3.5-kilometer swim. So that I am the most average female for the Bondi Coal Classic. And I have a t-shirt that says average female on it.
Wow. But you're right. Open water swimming is no joke. I've only run one triathlon, and it was a sprint, so it wasn't that big of a giant deal. And the body of water was a lake, not the ocean. And I haven't yet signed up for one that involves an ocean. It's a little scary, quite frankly.
Well, the scarier one is when I did the Alcatraz swim before I moved to Australia, when I was living in San Francisco. So that one's cold and challenging water. Yes.
Wow. See, we got two, because I didn't know you did the Alcatraz swim.
I did a lot of swimming, and then I got very into triathlon when I lived in Australia. So
wow.
My 30th birthday challenge, if I'd had a Daruma back then, I would have been able to set a big Daruma. I did a half Ironman. So
oh wow.
Yeah, I
Congrats. That's
could not do that now. That was a long time ago, but
yeah,
yes.
right. You and me both. What quality do you admire most in others?
Oh, that's so that there's so many qualities, but I think leading with caring. So to putting others first and assuming positive intent is.
Yeah, that's a good one. We have, I think, Sonia Singh.
Yes, of course. I know Sonia. We used to work together at Sutter Health many years.
Oh, I did not know that either. So Sonia and I are good friends, and she's on TikTok. So shout out. But she just posted something about that very thing, assuming positive intent. And I'm like, good advice. Good advice.
Yep.
Because especially now, I think we're so quick to judge, and it's like gotcha kind of, and we're all about the gotchas and the sound bites. And but yeah,
Yep. And
it's a good
I put
valid point.
that. So in my accelerator program, I have people write their 10-point leadership credo. And one of my points on my credo is make no assumptions except assuming positive intent. That's the only good assumption to make.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, Katie. So we only have a few minutes left. So I always like to throw it back over to the guest. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to cover? Any words of wisdom to share with the listenership?
There's so many, I don't know if words of wisdom, but thank you, Paul. I was an honor to be your very first guest and to come back again today. Truly, what lights me up is connecting with people around the world. And so if people can reach out to me on LinkedIn and on Twitter, everything is kbjanderson. Or just my handle, KBJ Anderson, and then my website, kbjanderson.com. I have a new, a guide on getting out of your habit of telling that's on my website, because I just redesigned my website, which is really exciting. So one of the key practices I think that helps us become better people is to ask more effective questions. And so I have some guides on there to help people do that. So please reach out and do that. And I'd love for people to join the Accelerator program and be part of this amazing cohort of learning to help you accelerate your leadership and to really have an opportunity to look inward about how can you become the best person you can be in service of others and your organization. So I guess the words of wisdom is just remember that reflection is the beginning and not the end of learning. Take time out to pause, to reflect, to have micro learnings throughout the day, and to be kind to yourself through all of our challenging times. So thanks for having me here, Paul. And I want to say thank you too. I've enjoyed listening to your different episodes with all your amazing guests and seeing your own PDCA cycles too, and in your podcast hosting. So it's a pleasure to be back.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad. Thank you for coming back. It's I'm blessed to have folks like you and Art and Karen and Isaac. I mean, all of the people that said yes when they clearly didn't have to. So I appreciate all of our guests to say, to come on, because I don't boast. It's not like I'm Joe Rogan. I don't have 5 million downloads a week. You know what I mean? So, and to the listeners, people that leave feedback and reach out to me, and it's very meaningful. And that's honestly why I do it. That's why I purposely don't do sponsorships and all that kind of stuff, because number one, it wouldn't make any money on it anyway. And that's not what I started this out to be anyway, because you alluded to it. It's, I do this to try to get people, because if you're driving, you obviously can't read. I mean, you can listen to an audiobook, but not everybody, right? So a podcast is a nice 30, 45-minute thing. You can listen, you can hear, you and all these other great folks talk about important things and hopefully help people, brighten their day up a little bit, give them a little encouragement. Like, yes, you're doing okay. Fall down 7, get up 8. So you fell down yesterday. It sucks, but today's a new day, and let's go get them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 100% with you there as well. So thank you again, Paul. And thanks to all the listeners for listening here today. Oh, and I forgot to mention that my book's now available in audiobook too. So if you are an audiophile, you can listen to Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn in audio format, narrated by me and Mr. Yoshino and John Shook as well. So there you go.
That's cool. So I'll link to that's an Audible.
It's on Audible and
Okay,
iTunes.
so I'll link to that in the show notes as well, so people can just easy click.
Cool. Thank you so much. Take
All
care,
right,
everyone.
Katie. Thanks again.
Day. Bye.
Bye. Hey, everybody, it's Paul. Before I let you go, I just wanted to say thanks again for listening. You've really made doing this podcast a very rewarding experience for me. I get a lot of messages from listeners. Everyone has something nice to say, which I very much appreciate. Of course, I'm always open to feedback on ways we can make it better. I mean, that's Kaizen, after all. And by no stretch do I claim to have got this all figured out. So if there's things that I could do better, please, by all means, feel free to reach out and let me know. And likewise, if there's somebody that you think would be a great guest, also let me know. There's a chance I don't know who those folks are. So somebody that you can help put us in touch with, somebody you want to learn more about, certainly let me know and I'll reach out to those folks. But I hope you find the podcast fun and entertaining, educational, and maybe even a little inspirational, I hope. That's really what I'm going after with this whole thing. So thanks again, and one small ask. If you don't mind, if you listen, whatever your preferred platform is, if you could just, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Apple or whatever, again, whatever platform you listen to, it helps. The algorithms like it. So if you could do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And we'll talk to you real soon. Thanks, everybody.